My name is ReVerse Butcher, and I am a VR artist and poet based in Ballarat, Australia. I created the projection artwork Corpus Spectralis for Hidden 2025. The title Corpus Spectralis translates to spectral bodies and is a site-specific projection artwork that the City of Ballarat commissioned me to create as part of a group exhibition including 7 other local Ballarat-based artists. It's an experiment in perception, in fractured time, and the convergence of histories, technological, bodily, and poetic. I began the creative process with a newspaper, one single crumbling edition of the Ballarat Star from July 11th, 1891. Accessed through the Ballarat Mechanics Institute's archives, this paper became the raw material for a series of experimental visual poems, or VISPO. Rather than marking or painting directly onto the historical originals, I photographed the paper, preserving their delicate textures. I then digitally collaged, illustrated, and layered it with other hand-painted vintage paper stocks from my personal archive, creating erasures and reassemblages that I turned into physically based materials, or PBR textures, for use on an original virtual sculpture, which I would then go on to create by hand, natively, in virtual reality. From those 6 core VISPO textures, I used Adobe Substance Sampler to develop and remix a library of PBR textures that allowed for a range of color moods and textural atmospheres that I could map onto the sculpture later. Essentially, it became my emotional toolkit. Before sculpting in VR, I start by making a reference model using DAZ 3D. Think of it like sketching from a life model, only I can control every element: the posture, facial features, body language. Even the fine detail on things like ears, fingernails, etc., each are unique. Every element matters, and the tiny things that people might not notice consciously still drive the narrative of the work. These imperfections and fine details also help me to create a work that rings true, and to avoid the uncanny valley effect. When you're working with any kind of sculpture, whether it be digital or physical, you're often trying to tell an entire story in one still moment. The symbolism of one single pose. It's a challenge I love. While many working in digital art lean into animation, I lean away. I'm drawn to the challenge of creating one frozen gesture that is capable of holding the whole message. Once the DAZ 3D model or mannequin feels right, I bring it into OpenBrush and begin sculpting in VR. This is a painstaking and physical process. I use my hands and controllers to build the sculpture up piece by piece. Think of a 3D collage or mosaic. I start with a color scheme of 5 to 6 colors. This helps me map the emotional tone of the piece. This early drafting guides my PBR texture choices later. The hair is sculpted strand by strand. The fingernails and eyelashes are all sculpted by hand. Nothing is automated. There is no generative AI, just time, vision, and attention. These creative sessions in VR can take weeks. I often lose track of time inside the headset. It's meditative and exhilarating. After the sculpture is complete, I bring it into Unreal Engine 5 and begin composing the cinematic. This is where the sculpture comes alive, not through animation of the form, but through the motion of the world around it. Light, shadow, atmosphere, cameras. I map the PBR materials onto the sculpture. Node by node, I link albedo, metallics, normal maps, and ambient occlusion, giving the sculpture texture, weight, and mood. The final cinematic, which is created using virtual filmmaking toolsets inside a video game engine, creates the final singular creative moment. This is where all the elements, the VISPO, the virtual sculpture, and the original soundtrack, which in this case was also created natively in VR, becomes the video used in the final projection artwork. Corpus Spectralis is a work that collapses time, media, and perception. It merges light, text, and form in a future-facing gesture while embedding Ballarat's unique history deep within its layers. This immersive and multi-sensory installation is presented in a light-controlled space built for illusion, the cyclorama of the local community TV studio. It invites viewers to reconsider what they see, what lies outside the frame, and how the past and present converge through both technology and art. At its core, Corpus Spectralis explores perception, reality, and illusion, echoing back to the nature of its site. A television studio is built to transmit images outward. This work turns that mechanism inside out. Instead of broadcasting a signal outward, it draws the viewer inward, reframing the studio as a portal. Created entirely in virtual reality using virtual filmmaking tools and video game engines, while drawing inspiration from Ballarat's very first historical newspaper, and made without physical cameras or real-world sets, Corpus Spectralis becomes a symbolic dialogue between old and new media. Corpus Spectralis is part of my larger Circle series. The Circle series is a long-form exploration of identity, memory, and human evolution. Each sculpture is a kind of transmission, a still figure reaching across medias, across times, made up of old texts and new tools. Hidden invited a cohort of 8 artists to activate the unseen and overlooked spaces of the city. The brief was simple but powerful. Make a projection work in your own visual language and let it transform the everyday into something extraordinary. The city of Ballarat is steeped in history and contested narratives. The Gold Rush looms large in its unique heritage architecture, its history of rebellion in the town's spirit. There are undertones of a more contemporary working-class struggle and a craving and curiosity for new ideas and new energy. And all this happening on stolen land that was never ceded, land that always was and always will be Aboriginal land. This project for me is about more than just illusion. It's about where we are now, caught between the analog and the virtual, between what's remembered and what's invented, between signal and silence. It asks us to question what's real, what's constructed, and what do we choose to see? Because, in the end, projection art is more than just light on a wall. It's a way of pulling ghosts, or spectral bodies, if you will, into the room and asking them to speak.